are Clint and Allison Dowda from A Double Dose of Dowda, and we are so excited to talk to you today about the importance of building relationships with students that really is going to help with good behavior in the classroom.
Yes.
So early in each of our careers, I don't think either of us realized really how important building good relationships with students was in terms of how that would help with behavior specifically.
Well, and I was about to leave teaching altogether just because it was hard and it didn't go well until I figured out that I need to really build those relationships with my students, and it made a world of difference.
Yeah. I came to the realization, too, in a much, I guess, easier way, though, than you had, of, you're not teaching content, you're teaching people. Like, you're teaching real live, humans, and so not to get so caught up on that. But now we understand that investing time on the front end and getting to know students is going to pay off tremendously in behavior, but also for learning for those students. The better relationship they have with you, the more they're going to learn from you. So what we have for you today are some ideas for how to build relationships with students in your classrooms. And I will say, where Clint shared, it was a tough start for him with teaching. He nearly left the teaching profession all those years ago, but we're glad he stayed with it. But since then, he really does a masterful job of building relationships with students, using his talents in his classroom. I know.
Thanks.
Using his talents in his classroom and just making it a really great experience for students. And I think when you get better behavior out of your students, obviously, it's going to be a better experience for you as a teacher as well. So we've got some ideas that teachers can take directly into their classrooms and start building some stronger relationships with students.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, and this may sound like a silly question, but I want to just throw it out there anyway. Does building relationships with students really make a difference with behavior?
Yes. Yes. Building relationships with students is the number one thing you should be focused on when you meet your students. It's not about making sure you stay on pacing with the curriculum guide. It's not about getting them to fill out their paperwork. It's about getting to know those students and starting to build that relationship with the students. And once you do, you're going to get the kids to like you and respect you. And now they don't necessarily have to like you and want to hang out with you, but they need to like you as a person and genuinely believe that you like them. And that's going to make the difference. Yeah.
And I'll just reference Todd Whitaker and his 14 things that great teachers do differently. One of the things that he talks about is getting kids on your side.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I think that's exactly what it's talking to. And I like what you said, that they need to like you, but they're not friends.
Right.
Like, you're not their buddy. But you do need to be likable for anybody to learn from you, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's fair to say. So my second question is, what do you do specifically in your classroom to help build relationships with students? Because you do some things that are a little different and unique.
Okay. I think what I struggled with when I first started teaching was I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to be what I thought a teacher was supposed to be, what I thought I needed to be, as far as trying to be really strict and really hard on the students. And I really tried to put myself on a pedestal and put the students down here. And the turnaround was, I just realized I wasn't having fun at school, and the students weren't having fun at school. So I just started letting my own personality kind of come in and do what I would want to do as far as have fun with students.
Yeah.
So I give nicknames to a bunch of my students. I always make sure that those are approved by the student. If they say, I don't want you to call me that, then I don't call them that. But most of the time they like their things. I've had Big Mac, Big Mike, one girl who liked to turn in her assignments in the middle of the night. I called her 3 for 3 a.m. So I'm all the time just coming up with goofy nicknames for students. And if they like them, they get to keep them. And many of them keep getting called that like all the way through high school, which I think is just kind of neat.
Yeah.
I use my humor in class. Right now we're doing some teaching where I'm teaching students online and in class at the same time. And so I'll pretend like something crazy is happening in the classroom, like a student is yelling and jumping up and down, and the student is really just sitting there and they don't know what to think of it. But the kids online are like, oh man, I can't believe she's really standing on top of her desk. I can't believe that. And so I just goof around with the students. They knock something off their desk, and of course I know which students I can do this with and which ones I can't. But I go over to them and I try and talk to them about their anger issues, and if they're upset, they can always come talk to me, knowing full well they just knocked their calculator off their desk. It's not a big deal. But just whatever I can do to have fun. If I'm having fun, I know the students are having fun. I tell stories. A lot of times I'll interrupt class. Sometimes I'll say, remind me about this story, and at the end of class, they're all like, don't forget, you're supposed to tell us that story about when you were a kid. And so, I shared one of those this week. But the kids like to get to know you, and I think they like that you trust them with that information and trust them with stories about you personally. And so it can really build the relationship that way, as well as they are going to want to tell you stories and tell you the things that they've got going on in their life.
Yeah, and I think that's just important for them to get to know how to interact with, other people too, and the give and take.
Mm-hmm.
I can completely relate to what you said initially about when you started off. I say in my early years I was too rigid. Like I think I probably always looked a little scared. I probably always had a little fear in my eye for those first couple of years. And I think I would add to that too, into that be yourself, and don't feel like that worst advice ever given to teachers is don't smile until Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's terrible advice. Don't ever think you have to do that. But being yourself, and also that doesn't mean that you need to be someone else. Like sometimes there are teachers who kids love, or that you loved as a kid growing up and that sort of thing. Like you don't need to try and duplicate that person's qualities. Like just do whatever your qualities are that, brings out the best in you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, another part of that too that you do, and you didn't mention this before, but you do like to talk to kids and find out more about them too. So it's not just about sharing who you are with them,
but it's also getting to know them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having conversations with them about what they're doing. And you can learn a lot from students when they tell you what they did over the weekend or what they did last night. They may say, we didn't go anywhere this weekend. I was home by myself all weekend, or they may be traveling the world and, taking their horses out. And you can learn a lot about a student, whether they're stuck at home all the time or their family owns horses. Those are two different family dynamics.
Those are two different lifestyles happening.
Yeah. And so you can kind of learn about the students and what they've got going on in their life, which is going to help you interact with them in the classroom.
Yeah. So another question, because that's how you build relationships with all students. Do you do anything different or anything special, or are you intentional in any way about building relationships with those difficult students or the ones who are going to have, sometimes you can see it on their faces that they're going to give you a little bit more of a challenge. Yeah. What do you do for those kids?
You just need to spend even more time and energy on those students. Students that are going to be maybe a behavior issue, maybe they've got a hard home life and they're, way behind academically. You want to go in with those students and just try and get as much face time with them as you can. That might mean you're sending them some extra emails through Google Classroom. It might mean you go over and check on them extra during the class when you're circulating around the room. You make sure and talk to them specifically. If you're having a classroom discussion, you try and engage them and just let them know that you're on their side. And you have to do that a little bit more for them because they're going to be a little more standoffish and a little harder to get to know. So you've got to put in that extra energy for those students.
Yeah, a kid who has typically been a troublemaker is probably going to expect you to come at them very quickly, knowing that they're a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And I remember I saw on Twitter one time, or read in a book somewhere, about the difference in if you see a kid, walking down the hallway, sometimes we're very quick to jump on them and say, where are you supposed to be? What are you out of class? And instead we should approach it as, hey, how's it going? You having a good morning?
Mm-hmm.
Can I help you find anything?
Yeah.
That sort of thing, just your approach. So when you say you spend more time talking to them, then that's positive time.
Yes. That's not more lecturing.
That's not more like I'm staying on them watching for them to mess up.
No.
I know that some research says that it's a 3-to-1 ratio that students need. If you get onto them, for you to still have a positive relationship with them, they need 3 positives.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is you need to build up that equity with those students as quickly as you can, knowing you'll probably need to cash it in later on.
Yeah.
But so that they know you're on their side.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm going to throw in, also a strategy that I would use, because I really, as a teacher, I always would try and find ways to love my kids, like some way, something. And sometimes some kids, it was just a little more difficult than others. And so one thing that I found, just happened upon at a parent-teacher conference one time, I met the parent, and all of a sudden my heart just really softened for this kid. And this happened a couple times. Sometimes it's because you hear the kid's story and you hear what they've gone through.
You quickly realize they're doing way better in that situation than you would do.
Yes. Yeah. And they're just coming from, like I'm tearing up a little bit just
thinking
about some of these stories. Yeah. And then though, some of them, like, I'm just going to be really honest, some of them, I met the parent and met the mama, and I was like, this child lives with this. Like, okay, I would misbehave too if that were my mama, and, if that's what I was living with. And so, just learning their stories, I think, is crucial in building relationships with those students, because it just makes them easier to love, once you have a little context. So developing some empathy, having extra grace and patience with them.
So build those relationships with those students. And again, it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to give you a head start and help you do better if you've got those relationships with the students. Yeah.
And not that you can't build those as the year goes on, but if you are able from early in the year, get a fresh start, that early start, and some early wins with those kids.
It's going to go a long way.
It is. So thanks for sharing your tips with us about building relationships with students and how that's going to help behavior. If you have any tips, we would love for you to include them in the comments section of this video. We can all learn from each other. Yeah. And so we would love that a lot.
As always, thanks for watching, and we would love for you to subscribe to our channel.